Every day, it feels like there is a new attack on science and facts in America. And now, the Washington Post is reporting that Trump officials are preparing to link COVID vaccines to the deaths of 25 children. Career scientists warn this claim is built on junk science, a database where anyone, you, me, can submit a report, even based on something they saw on social media. It is unverified. But this isn't happening in isolation. At the same time that there's confusion over access to the COVID booster, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy has also canceled more than $500,000 in funding for mRNA vaccines to treat diseases like COVID and the flu. But it's not just health policy. The EPA has announced plans to stop requiring businesses from power plants to oil refineries to report their greenhouse gas emissions. Up until this point, this has been the main way we track climate change and hold polluters accountable. This coordinated assault on science is no accident, as scientists Michael Mann and Peter Hotez explain in their new book, Science Under Siege. They put it like this: there is a highly organized, well-funded campaign of anti-science, and it has now emerged as its own deadly force that not only makes it nearly impossible to combat future pandemics or the climate crisis, but also touches on many other aspects of our daily lives. We must now contend with orchestrated disinformation on a diverse range of topics. Joining us now are the co-authors of Science Under Siege, How to Fight the Five Most Powerful Forces That Threaten Our World. Michael Mann, Distinguished Professor of Earth and Environmental Science at the University of Pennsylvania and co-founder of RealClimate.org, and Dr. Peter Hotez, co-director at the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital and Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. Thank you both so much for being here. You know, one of the key things that you guys talk about in the book is that something like this doesn't really happen overnight, right? This has been an attack on experts, expertise, the elites for a decade. And, you know, the concern that I have, and I guess maybe the question for you guys is, how do we roll that back, or is it too late? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Mann.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having us on. So, yeah, I'm glad you asked about that, because those of us in the climate arena, climate scientists like myself, have found ourselves under attack for decades now because of the science that we do and the inconvenience of that science to some powerful vested interests, the fossil fuel industry and various groups and individuals that they fund. And so when a few years ago I saw that my colleagues in the public health sector, people like Peter, Tony Fauci, were being attacked in the same way that my colleagues and I had been attacked for decades, using the same tactics and many of the same players being behind those attacks, I realized that there was something much wider. I can't remember if I reached out to Peter or Peter reached out to me. We became friends because we realized essentially we were brothers in arms, and we were up against something much larger, which is this assault on science.
I want to get to some of the other headlines that we've seen this week about blue state governors launching a vaccine counter-offensive. You have J.B. Pritzker, who's exploring ways to stockpile COVID shots in Illinois. Kathy Hochul, she signed an executive order protecting vaccine access in New York. Maura Healey is requiring insurers in Massachusetts to cover the cost of injections recommended by her health department, regardless of the federal guidelines. But I'm very curious from your all's perspective, in terms of the powers of persuasion when it comes to the rhetorical battle against misinformation and this MAHA movement that is so focused on, I think, you know, the public, the public persuasion of this all. What else can elected leaders who believe in science, who want to save lives, who want to make sure herd immunity is maintained, what else can they be doing from a communication perspective?
Well, you know, I guess I'll take that one because it's about vaccines. I mean, what's going on, as you point out, is unprecedented. Actually having coalitions of states organize to go up against recommendations from the Department of Health and Human Services and its agencies. So you have California, Washington State, and Oregon working together. Now you've got New York State possibly joining in, Massachusetts, Illinois. And the simple reason is because the recommendations and the rhetoric coming out of Health and Human Services is basically pushing a pseudoscience agenda. It's claiming, still going back to vaccines causing autism, which is something that I got involved with many years ago because I have a daughter with autism and had written explaining why vaccines don't cause autism. It's got a lot of rhetoric during our measles epidemic this year that started in West Texas and landed 100 kids in the hospital, causing 2 deaths. And you have our Health and Human Services Secretary comparing vaccines to a useless cocktail of nutritional supplements. Then you've got now the latest rhetoric saying that COVID vaccines killed more kids or Americans than COVID. It's absolute nonsense. So what do you do when recommendations are being issued which you know are going against public health? And that's what we're facing right now.
Professor Mann, real quickly, let's talk specifically about the press. You both point out that the mainstream media is sometimes amplifying misinformation. What should journalists be doing differently to avoid being manipulated, to avoid spreading misinformation?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jonathan. And, I'm not sure the journalists necessarily are always the source of that. Sometimes it's sort of the editorial oversight. One of the things that we talk about in the book is, obviously there's the conservative media, the right-wing press, the Murdoch media machine, Fox News, the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal. And we're used to them promoting this sort of anti-science, this ideologically motivated anti-science. But what Peter and I call out in the book is something more pernicious now, what we call the performative neutrality of even the mainstream press. And there are examples in the New York Times and your former paper, Jonathan, the Washington Post, where the editorial pages will promote anti-science. For example, the idea that COVID-19 was the result of a lab leak. There's no scientific evidence for that at all, but they present that on an equal footing and provide a platform for that sort of misinformation.
And with that, we're going to have to leave it there. Professor Michael Mann, Dr. Peter Hotez, thank you both very much for coming to the weekend.